What's up, Wolverine fans? Jack here, another episode of The Big and Bold. And today I'm talking about Michigan football under Jim Harbaugh. And I think it's pretty obvious that Michigan football is the clear definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So I have a few slides made for you guys that I want to go over. It just helps me present to you the information a little easier that I have. And I'm going to say a couple things first. And I'm saying this for the people in the back to make sure everybody can hear me. Yes, there are still games to be played. Michigan's got to play Penn State this weekend. And then, of course, they have Ohio State at the end of the year. Let's not forget about Maryland, sandwich in between there. So I understand that there are games left to be played. They're the 6th ranked team in the country, although they don't deserve to be there. I think anybody with a brain understands that. But the point that I'm trying to make is that the football team and the coaching staff has to worry about the position they're in right now as it pertains to, one game at a time. But as a fan base, having seen these scenarios play out before, we are allowed to scrutinize the position they're in. Alumni are able to scrutinize the position they're in because we've seen this before. And I'm going to prove it to you guys. I understand people are excited about the fact that they're a top 10 team and that they do technically control their own destiny. Sort of, because Ohio State needs to beat Michigan State in order for Michigan to play for a Big Ten title. And Michigan, of course, has to win out the rest of the year. But if you're not interested in changing your perspective on how you feel about Michigan, have a glass half full perspective on the year if you'd like. And that's fine. I'm not telling you not to do that. And if you can go about your day thinking, they can win out. I hear that all the time on Michigan fan pages. What if they just win out? Every team in the country wants to win out. What does that mean? They win most of their games under Jim Harbaugh. I like watching them win 9-10 games a year. They're better than they were under Rich Rod and Brady Hoke. And if you want to blue pill that thing, go ahead. Turn the video off now. Don't give it a listen. But if you're a part of the fan base, that other half that is very skeptical of Michigan football's position, despite the fact that they're a top 10 team, and despite the fact that they're 8-1, this is for you. And this video is for those of you that don't understand that other half of the fan base, that don't understand why people are so skeptical of Jim Harbaugh and Michigan football right now. So with that said, let's get into the video and let's start talking about some of the issues I have with Michigan football under Jim Harbaugh, because we have seen the same thing play out year after year. And if you're looking at the screen, I have each season under Jim Harbaugh lined up for you with the exception of the 2020 season. Because that was such a crazy year, they dealt with opt-outs, injuries, COVID issues. They only played 6 games. So I'm being fair here. I'm not a Harbaugh hater. And this isn't me calling for Harbaugh's job. Throwing this information up on the screen for you guys is not me saying Jim Harbaugh should be fired. This isn't me saying the season is doomed, because I don't know what the rest of the season is going to look like. But I'm going to tell you that in the past, Michigan would lose to Penn State, and then they'd probably lose to Ohio State at the end of the year. But I have up for you a few patterns, a few things I've noticed. Every year, Michigan has an upset, an unfortunate loss. They're on the wrong end of a controversial game. In 2015, it was the fumble at the snap with Michigan State. Okay, you can understand that. 2016, they lost to Iowa by the field goal at the end of the game. They had playoff aspirations even with that loss. But of course, then you had the J.T. Barrett game against Ohio State, and where he was called, where people believe that he was short of the 4th down. Some believe he got the 1st down. Regardless, 2017, I'd take, you can kind of take your pick, but I would take the Michigan State game. That was an unranked Michigan State. I'm not upset that they lost to Penn State. I'm not upset that they lost to a 5th ranked Wisconsin. I'm upset that they lost to an unranked Michigan State as a top 10 team. That's really where their season started to fall apart. 2018, I guess you could take the Notre Dame game. I'm not mad that they lost at Notre Dame. It was a ranked team. But 2019, I would take the Penn State or the Wisconsin game. They got blown out by Wisconsin. They dropped the game-tying touchdown in the 4th quarter against Penn State. And then we've already seen it in 2021. We saw them lose to Michigan State with a 16-point lead, with several opportunities in the 4th quarter to take the lead. just disappointing performances against rivals. I'm not mad about every loss, as I said, but some of these games I just don't think they should be losing. And I don't think they should be losing to rivals like they have. Jim Harbaugh doesn't just have an Ohio State problem. He's got a problem against his rivals. He's got a problem against the better teams in the Big Ten. And then, of course, you can see at the end of every year, 2016, 17, 18, 19, they lose at least their last 2 games of the season. Whether they walk in as a 1-loss or a 2-loss team or more, they're dropping that game to Ohio State, and they're dropping whatever bowl game they make. And that's been the case since 2015. I would at least feel a little better about the fact that the guy can't beat Ohio State if he was winning some bowl games. But instead, they gave up a lead to South Carolina. They got blown out by Florida. They were competitive in the first half against Alabama, and that went by the wayside. No shame in losing to a point to a very good Florida State team. Again, I'm not upset about every loss here. I understand they're going to lose some games. But you can see this pattern where there's this inability to beat ranked teams, a complete inability to beat ranked teams on the road, and obviously the inability to beat Ohio State and to win bowl games. That to me is the real problem here. And considering we already have that kind of one loss on the year, why should I believe that Michigan is going to do anything differently at the end of this year that they haven't already? And depending on how this week shakes up with Penn State, if they beat Penn State and they walk into Ohio State undefeated and lose that game, basically 2018 all over again, 2016 all over again. If they lose to Penn State and then lose to Ohio State, it's 2019 all over again. And you can see that on the screen. I mean, in 2019, they lost to Wisconsin, Penn State, then lost to Ohio State. In 2018, they dropped the Notre Dame game, lost to Ohio State. 2016, they got upset by Iowa, lost to Ohio State. It's not just an Ohio State problem. There's a few things going on and a few teams Harbaugh's having trouble with. I mean, he's 3-9 against Ohio State and Michigan State, and 2-13 against top 10 teams. Like, that is a legitimate issue and so far removed from, say, the Lloyd Carr era of Michigan football. But he's 3-3 against Penn State. We'll see if that goes to 3-4 or 4-3 this weekend. He's 3-3 against Wisconsin, 1-1 against Iowa. He dominates everybody else. You know what I mean? He dominates all these other teams in the Big Ten, but against the teams that matter, not looking so hot. And that's what I'm trying to get at, is kind of 2 points here. Is that I'm sick of watching them win games that don't really matter if you win them. They only matter if you lose them. And then losing the games that really matter. I understand that he's gotten Michigan into the top 10 of the AP poll. I understand that he's put them into the, quote, playoff conversation, unquote. And he has made Michigan football more nationally relevant. Like, this is true. And I'm not putting all of the blame on Jim Harbaugh, but he's in year 7. And we have 1 bowl game win. We don't have a win over Ohio State. We have a losing record to Michigan State. Not even a sniff of the Big Ten title game. There's just nothing to look at but essentially a bunch of wins against unranked opponents. And again, if at this point I haven't changed your mind on that, then go watch highlights of the Notre Dame game in 2019, okay, and turn off the video. But I did want to show you guys just the pattern that has been Michigan football under Jim Harbaugh. And right now we're either setting ourselves up for, say, the 2016-2018 season, or we're setting ourselves up for the 2019 season. And if you ask me, after seeing that 2 or 3 times, I'm not too pleased with where they're at right now. Yes, top 10 team, 1 loss, control their own destiny. And as soon as they beat Ohio State, this becomes null and void. Beating Penn State is one of those roadblocks. It's going to be a big win for them, a great win. Granted, it's a 3-loss Penn State, but that is a good win. And if they beat Ohio State, forget if this video was ever made. Forget that I created this video. He would still only be 1-5 against Ohio State. But he finally got the win. Now you think, what has caused this, right? What has caused this problem for Michigan? And I think I've identified 1 or 2 major areas, and you can kind of look up and see what I'm getting at here. I have Michigan football's quarterback stats for all but 2 seasons, 2017 and 2020, because in 2017, they had to play like 3 different quarterbacks. They were dealing with injuries. It was a mess. And again, the 2020 season, I think, was an outlier for Jim Harbaugh. So I ignore that. And I stacked it up with the passing numbers for Ohio State quarterbacks of the same season. And you think, why Ohio State? Well, the point I'm trying to make here is that Ohio State's offense for at least the last 10 to 15 years has really been the standard for offenses in the Big Ten. It doesn't really get better than that. And you see the success that Ohio State football has had since Jim Harbaugh arrived. And a huge proponent of that is the passing game. In 2015 and 2016, the passing numbers are fairly comparable. Now, the difference, though, is that J.T. Barrett ran for over 600 yards and 10 rushing touchdowns in 2015, and he was a 1,000-yard rusher in 2016. So when you throw that into it, you can kind of see why, the quarterback play has been far better for Ohio State than it has Michigan. And then starting in 2018, it hasn't even been comparable. You see what Dwayne Haskins did in 18, what Justin Fields started doing in 2019. And now so far through the 2021 season, Michigan's not even close to what Ohio State has in terms of their passing offense. And yes, Michigan has a very good run game. But have you seen Travion Henderson for Ohio State? The kid's phenomenal. He's a freshman. So they can run the ball out there too. How do you even identify the best passing season that we've seen under Jim Harbaugh thus far? I mean, if Jake Rudock is really the standard to beat, then Michigan's passing game has not been very good. And I think that is a huge issue for them, where even when their defense has played superb football, the offense really hasn't been there. Now, I've thrown up there Michigan's offensive coordinators for these seasons, and I averaged out the amount of points they scored in each game that season. It's not the perfect indicator for offensive success because, of course, there's defensive touchdowns in there and so on and so forth, strength of schedule. But I wanted to have an idea of how Michigan was scoring in each of these seasons. Tim Drevno, obviously, from 2015 to 2017 was the offensive coordinator. Jim Harbaugh took over play calling duties in 2018, and since then it's been Josh Gaddis. And in Michigan's 2 best seasons under Jim Harbaugh, 2016 and 2018, they were scoring at a pretty high rate. As you can see, 40.3 and 35.1. Right now, Michigan's at 36.2. I'm sure that by the time the season is over, that's going to level itself out a little bit to the 35 range, because I don't see them scoring much on Penn State, Ohio State. I don't doubt they could blow up Maryland, but that to me is a good indicator of what kind of year we might see them finish out with, because they're right around that 2018 mark of points scored. And in my mind, that tells me they should beat Penn State, they should beat Maryland, and then they're probably going to lose to Ohio State at the end of the year. And they're going to get a New Year's Six Bowl, just like Michigan did in 2018. And they're probably going to lose that too. And even if they were to win that New Year's Six Bowl, does it really matter? I'm not saying fire Jim Harbaugh if he goes 10-2. And obviously if he goes 11-2 and wins a bowl game, he's not going anywhere. But Michigan is just stuck in this rut of the same thing over and over again. Blaming the quarterback, blaming the defensive coordinator. First we were blaming Don Brown because he was giving up a lot of points in big games. Started that really in 2018, saw it carry through in 2019, finally got fired in 2020. And now through the 2021 season, we've seen Mike Macdonald's defense dominate lesser competition and then give up 5 rushing touchdowns to Kenneth Walker. Now, I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen with Mike Macdonald. But what I'm saying is that what's going to happen after this year when you have to replace David Ojabo and Aiden Hutchinson, Josh Ross and Daxton Hill? Is Mike Macdonald going to be able to do that? Because I have a feeling the defense is going to step back to next season. But again, can't predict the future, right? I'm just here to try and present to you the situations at hand. And from what I've seen of this defense, which is struggle against playmaker quarterbacks like Adrian Martinez for Nebraska, struggle against good run games like Michigan State, passing game is not there. Run game is great. I'm not saying anything about the run game. But the passing game isn't there to keep up with Ohio State. I don't know if the defense is going to be. I have a feeling C.J. Stroud is going to dice up Michigan's secondary because their cornerback position is still a weakness. that we're going to be sitting here thinking this is just like 2018. This is just like 2016. I've seen this before. It's happening again. Do something different. If I was to try and give my prediction for the rest of this season, history would indicate that they're going to go 10-3, just in all likelihood. I mean, I can't say how that 10-3 is going to be. You know what I mean? But they're probably going to be 10-3, and it'll be the fourth time they've been 10-3 under Jim Harbaugh. And there are going to be people saying that as a positive, like, man, we've won 10 games, 4 different times. Yeah, that is a good thing. It's a good mark to have. But doesn't it remind you a little bit of, say, like Bo Pelini at Nebraska? He didn't lose, many games. He never won less than 9, but he also couldn't win more than 10. I mean, Michigan was more nationally relevant than what Nebraska was under Bo Pelini, but don't you think that's a little interesting? That we've kind of relegated ourselves to a 9 or 10 win program that can't beat its rivals or win a bowl game. So do something different. Please, for the love of God, Michigan football, Jim Harbaugh, do something different this year. Don't just beat Ohio State. Don't just beat Penn State. Go out and beat Ohio State or win a freaking bowl game. Just something different. Even if it's false hope for next year, just do something different. Because we've seen this over and over again, and I am sick of it. I am so sick of it. And you might think, oh, you're a spoiled Michigan fan. They're spoiled alumni. Like, it's not too much to ask to watch Michigan beat Ohio State more than like twice in my lifetime. And honestly, when they beat them in 2011, that was like a 6-win Ohio State team. Great. Michigan is in a really tough spot, and I get that. Harbaugh took over for Michigan's 2 worst coaches since before Bo Schembechler got there. And what Harbaugh has done is turned them into a 9-win team that has nothing in the trophy case. That to me is not good enough. So, as I said, to wrap this video up, as soon as they beat Ohio State, as soon as they do something different, forget about this. You know what I mean? It's going to be a whole nother conversation. But until then, until I see it, I'm not going to believe it. I'm not going to believe it can happen with Jim Harbaugh because it really feels like they've hit a ceiling. And that ceiling isn't bad, but it is far from great. They're just stuck at good. And that is one of the worst places to be at because it's not justifiable enough to make the coaching change, but you're not content with the success you've had either, or that the team has had, I should say. So everybody, thank you for listening. I think I made all my points that I wanted to make. Believe me, it could be worse. And if Michigan loses to Penn State this weekend, then I'm calling for his job because in all likelihood, he's losing to Ohio State and another 9-3 season. Even if he won a bowl game, I could really care less at that point. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. What's your standard for Michigan football? I know this wasn't news to everybody. I'm sure you guys are aware of some of the records that Harbaugh's had, some of the negative and positive records he has. Some of the reasons for why Michigan has struggled. But the one constant's been Jim Harbaugh. He's been there through coaches and quarterbacks, and it's been him. So I have to think that this is just what the team is at this point. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. What's your standard for Michigan? Let me know if you liked the video. Agree, disagree. I just appreciate you guys for listening. I'm coming out with a couple more videos over the course of the next week. A lot of different topics I want to talk about. I'm going to be talking Nebraska football, things like that. So thank you for listening, everybody. Please like and subscribe. That's all I ask. I love making content for you guys about college football in general, but especially Michigan. And go blue and beat Penn State.